Hey guys, before we dive into the show, I wanted to tell you about the perfect trailer queue blueprint, which is 100% free, and you can download it right now over at thetrailermusicschool.com/blueprint. Now, this blueprint will help you to completely understand the structure of trailer music, how to build tracks that will be more licensable and have more impact and capture the right people's attention. So whenever you start writing a cue, make sure you've got this blueprint to hand and you can use it to help speed up your process, feel more confident that you've crafted a well-structured trailer cue before you send it off to that publisher or editor or supervisor. Okay, let's get into the episode. Hey guys, you've heard it from me so many times about how awesome the Protégé course is. So I thought it was probably best for you to hear from some of our students.
I went into the Protégé course with a pretty unhealthy amount of insecurity about the music I was writing at the time, struggling to structure tracks, to finish them on a regular basis.
We're going to have a bunch of people basically working in the industry, get briefs every week, and then we publish them. I was like, what? That sounds like insane. I've never heard of any other people doing that sort of thing, like actually like mentoring people on like the level of like, no, we're doing it for an entire year. Yeah, that's why I think the Protégé thing is just amazing, because it's targeted. It's okay, we want this type of music for this type of application. Let's do it. And then, okay, here's where you fell short, here's where you succeeded, and it's just amazing.
I feel like I've learned so much and improved so much in my production skills. I've gotten better at percussion and better at my capacity to write tracks quicker has improved, and I've gotten better at properly responding to feedback, and I feel like now there is more of a future for me in the library world than there was before I started.
It's definitely a course that I would recommend doing. There are so many courses out there, but this one really hammers home on how to write to brief, how to write quickly, and how to write expertly as well. Honestly, the videos are very user-friendly, they're very engaging, and you get to have breakdowns of some of Richard's most successful tracks, or Elephant Music's most successful tracks, which has been really useful as well. So I thoroughly recommend to dive right in.
Protégé was one of the best investments that I ever made in my career. It did level up my game, and not just in skill, but also in my confidence. It just made me a more professional composer and a better composer.
But the course did exactly what it intended to do, in that it kind of demystified the whole composition process, taught me a bunch of good habits. And I suppose most importantly, and what I'm the most grateful for, is the fact that it actually helped me to really enjoy writing music again.
There you have it, guys. We are opening our doors for applications for the 21-22 masterclass year with Protégé.school. Go to protégé.tiny.us/apply. That's protégé.tiny.us/apply to start your application.
One man, one community. In the Trailer Music School's monthly group call. Welcome to the Trailer Music Composers Podcast.
Welcome. Thank you guys for turning up. So welcome to another, I guess, episode of the Trailer Music Composers Podcast. But this month is going to be another group call with my trailer music community at the Trailer Music School. So these guys each month are going to get a brief, and they write to that brief, and then I give them feedback on a select few tracks. And also if they've got some sort of burning questions, then they can ask those questions. Minko Karlsbeek is obviously the biggest question producer of the community, usually averaging about 10 questions. I think you've been, reined in this month. So nice to see you all. Thank you all for joining me. So shall we start with the questions, Espen?
Yeah, let's start with Paul. He asks, It seems there are two main types of trailers, customs and releasing an album for production in which a publisher gets you the sync with the trailer house. Is this correct? What are the details we as the composer should know? How does one get custom work? Thanks so much.
Okay, there's a couple of questions in there, isn't there, really?
Yeah.
Does it only work as a production music company and a custom scoring company? Pretty much. Sometimes the two worlds meet. So what you'll find with trailer music is there'll be a bunch of composers who are called on for custom work, which is when they write to the brief, usually to the trailer, not the actual trailer. If they do give you a trailer, they'll give you an NDA or some kind of like blacked out version of the trailer that just has edit points and things. And that's the custom work. That's the big prize money at the end of it, basically. But it's also very, very stressful and competitive. Well, it's all competitive, but what's happening is it's all these trailer libraries sort of putting their composers forward to the trailer houses. The trailer houses are all making their cuts for the trailers, and they're getting sometimes, not always, custom tracks written for those trailers. And then there's multiple trailer houses pitching for the same job. So what you'll find is that, you know, there could be any number of trailers having custom composers working on it. So I've worked on customs where there's a whole team of us doing custom tracks for a trailer within the one company, and then there are multiple companies doing the same stuff. Custom works can be really fun. I'm not a huge fan of it myself, and I say this quite a lot because the thing I love about trailer music is the experimental nature of it, but also I love the fact that I can kind of do it on my own time. Custom work, being in the UK, means that when you're doing custom work, it's almost like you never sleep because you'll work all day here, and then at 6 p.m, LA wakes up and sends you feedback. So you then work from 6 p.m. to 2, 3 a.m, go to sleep, wake up at whatever it is in the morning, 6, 7 a.m, for the second round of feedback on the track from LA. So it can be very, very hard work, but it also can be incredibly good. I've had a custom where the editor and the supervisor just contacted me and said, "Look, we want you to do the job. We love your work. Just do what you do." What? This is nice. So yeah, that's custom. How you get into custom is basically there's many it's how do you get into anything, really? There's many doors to the same room. It could be through meeting and connecting with music supervisors, through editors, through trailer house owners, through trailer music library owners. There's many ways. The way I have got custom is through, obviously, Vic at Elephant Music, and I used to do custom work with Pusher as well. So I went through the music library company who were pitching me and a handful of other composers. The other side of it is the production music, which is basically a music library. So you produce albums on spec for a music library's brief to their deadline. And then they send out the album to all their clients. And that's pretty much it. That's where I sit very, very happily, because I can write pretty much whatever albums. Oh, hey, Wenda. Pretty much. Hey, guys. Pretty much. I forgot what I was saying now. I can write pretty much whatever I want at a leisurely pace. Custom's very much like we need it yesterday, or it can be. Whereas working to an album is generally a lot more relaxed. You'll have sort of weeks, perhaps even months to work on an album. And, it's just lovely just to sit in your own studio and just make a load of noise, and just feel a little bit more relaxed about it. But I know, Kieran and Cody here on the show as well, they love custom, and they're very, very good at it too. And John Hanson, who was on the podcast from Confidential Music, he is masterful at custom. And listen to the podcast episode, because he talks about custom in like a beautiful scoring way. He is scoring the trailer. I think honestly, I just dealt with imposter syndrome heavily whenever I did custom. I don't deserve this, and then I'd up a limit and produce a really below par track. So yeah, anyway, got dark. Next question.
Yeah, this is from Minko. This month was Epic Synth Pitch. This focuses, in my opinion, on hook sounds or signature sounds. When you do an album of this stuff, do you keep everything in the template? Do you build a new template per track, or only change the signature stuff? Like, for instance, you keep the strings and all of that in the same template.
Great question. Well, I would say I approach this in a lot more relaxed way. Organic sound design and sound design in general, for me, is kind of like a halfway house between no template and a beautifully laid out template. The thing you've got to think about, if you're approaching sound design, this level of sound design, you're thinking to yourself, okay, what is it that I will need on every track? Okay, so I'm going to need drums. I'm going to need swish hits. I'm going to need pretty much all level of percussion. So have your percussion stems ready in these types of tracks, because they are the things that you will need on everything. Then there will be some go-to things. They're not signature sounds, but like basses, synth pads, and washes. Have some stems of those. And what they're going to be is they're going to be your sketching materials. They're like your pencils when you're doing a painting, essentially. And then, so if I was doing the throat stuff, which is the organic sound design with the cello, I would have that. I would have my drums. I would have my other sounds. So with that stuff, I would have a selection of stems of strings because it's quite string heavy. And then I would just have a load of audio channels where I would just have some fun creating organic sounds. And I really love this world because it's got the rigidity of large templates and structures, but then it's got the free form play of sound design. So my suggestion would be to ease the pressure from yourself is, as I have done in the hybrid trailer course, sketch the track with hits. Sketch out your acts, sketch out the drops and how you will do them. Sketch out any major rhythmic elements. So obviously in this type of stuff, you get a lot of reiterations of rhythms. Specifically, you'll have like that kind of dun, 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 just before wham, and then that will switch into tuplets or triplets, dun, 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 or something like that. And there'll be just ornaments of the same thing, basically just highlighting a 4-bar drop at any point, or highlighting the wham. And once you've sketched that out, you then have relieved the pressure because your mind is telling you, well, I've done the track because I can see it from start to finish. So there's no more panic about finding an original sound. And my advice on this one is, if you are going to approach original sounds, i.e. signature sounds, think about them in a much more simplistic way. You can use a stock synth patch for a signature sound, but think about playing it differently. You can hear a lot of trailer composers, to make their sounds, air quotes, signature, they just use pitch bends. They bend it as if it's being played. It's blown my mind. Pitch bends. I mean, that's how I've done it as well. And that's all I'm doing on the cello. You think about what people do when they create organic sound design with an instrument. There's usually some malleability to the sound. And the quickest way for that is pitch. And if pitch isn't, if you don't want to mess with pitch, then mess with filters. You can get, like the mouth, opening the filter, all of a sudden this single tone has so much more character. If you mix the two, filters and pitch, then you can take a relatively dull sounding patch and make it really, really interesting. I think I went on a bit there, but you get the point.
Yeah, this one is from Brigitta. What's the story behind the intro/outro music of the TMS podcast? Where can we listen to the whole track?
I'd love to say this was an interesting story. It's really not an interesting story, Brigitte. The story was simply I was starting the podcast, and I thought, well, all my favorite podcasts have like a characterful intro, an intro that identifies them separately from another show. And I don't mean like stock music. So one of my favorite ones has it's the host beatboxing at the start. I think it's great because you're like, oh, the host's making some tunes. Yeah, this is awesome. So I thought, okay, what am I well known for? I'm well known for badly played cello. So I simply played my cello badly for that intro. And I was like, well, how am I going to make it sound all cool? And then I just did all my usual stuff, which is basically just a riser and a big swish hit at the end. Cheating. And then the one man was just a play on the, I've forgotten his name, the famous voiceover artist, Don LaFontaine. In a world, that one. That was just my play, one man. That was the story behind it. That's a nice question. I like it. Creative. Yeah. I'm sorry it wasn't as sexy and as cool as it could have been, but it was yeah. It is what it is.
Right. Maybe you can send it to her if she wants to listen to it.
Oh, the full track. You've heard the full track already. That's it. I'm not going to waste my time writing a 3-minute cue if I'm only going to use 30 seconds. I wrote a 30-second cue, Bridget. I can, of course, if anyone wants to hire me to produce a custom based on the intro, I will be happy to take offers.
Right. From Wenda, she wants to know what did you get to replace your Mac that died, and how do you like it?
You're going to be so disappointed in me, Wenda. So my 2010 Mac is still active. It's still here. It's still the workhorse of my studio. I did, however, fork out quite a lot of money for a replacement. There you go. That cardboard box holds the next 10 years of my production. It's one of those Mac towers. It's basically, compared to what I'm running, it's basically a spaceship from Star Trek. But, so I'm a little bit intimidated. I know I mentioned this on when I was talking to Kieran and Cody on the banter show, as we call it. I'm intimidated by having to transfer all my sample library, not the actual transferring of the files, but telling Logic where all my presets are. Because even though you can say, Logic, I've saved them all here, and it goes, okay, I'll figure them all out. It doesn't. You load up an old session and it's like, please relocate this file yourself. I don't want to do that. I know the summer's coming and I could potentially do that then, but Wenda, give me another 2 years maybe. I'll need some more. Actually, I'm not going to say it. Fingers crossed. My beautiful Mac is still running smoothly, but the only issue is I can't run some of the libraries I've bought because I load it and Logic dies. Which one was it? Who did Los Angeles Scoring Strings? They did an absolutely stunning brass library that I bought, and I was so excited to load it up, and every time I load it up, it crashed. So it just sits there. Audio Bro, that's it, yeah. It's just sitting there sparkling in my contact menu, like the mythical beast I will never play. But yeah, that's it, I'm afraid.
All right, should we move on to listening to some tracks?
Yeah, okay. So just so you can remind the listeners as well as the good people in the community, what was the brief this month, Espen?
It was dark action sound design, just pretty much just synths and hard-hitting drums.
Okay. Before we listen to... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Paul, I'm running a 2009. Oh, nice. You have old-schooled me. Well done, sir. Right. Let's talk a little bit about this action sound design stuff. Yeah, Mike, we've got stereo running. Just for the listeners who haven't been on these calls before, I have historically done everything in mono just because I couldn't find the button that says stereo on Zoom. But now Espen's taken over. It works brilliantly. Anyway, let's talk about action sound design. This is somewhat a staple for trailer music composers. And I think it's a really important staple for the simple fact that you're learning not just to write action sound design cues. If you treat these as stems for other styles of writing, then you are actually just reinforcing what you will have already learned about trailer music. So much of action sound design is rhythmic interest, but at its simplest. You know, I'm not talking TV spot action sound design, which is bonkers and amazing, and I love it. We're talking big feature trailers, big sounds, big drums, but then you just replace the sound design element and put hybrid synth and orchestra. The drum stems are still pretty much going to do the same stuff. So it's a really interesting one because it hammers home some basic principles about structure, about build, and about tension. Can you maintain build, structure, and tension with minimal elements? It's very, very tempting with sound design to just layer a ton of stuff. But as with, like a lot of EDM, you can just have one synth being the workhorse or one single sound. I'm not saying I do that. I have a tendency of over-layering. And I think that's an insecurity thing personally, but, making up for something, obviously. So this one is a workhorse because it gets placed on so many trailers. And like I said, it does get used across the board, not just action films. It's often used action, horror, thriller, sci-fi, basically everything except family films. They will use these, even in comedies, they'll use these because they're just fantastic. And again, it's all over TV. TV promos and things, and TV spots, because action sound design cues are punchy and they are loud and they have character straight away. And if you can communicate that with your track, then you're more likely to land a TV spot. TV spots need to be loud, they need to be in your face, and they need to be, basically an oral slap in the face, really. So let's
start with, I think it's here, Tim Brown. His track Ascent into Darkness.
Nice name. Dude, Tim, what are you having for breakfast? Wow. Okay, so let's talk about the thing that grabbed me immediately. Tim has done the thing that a lot of composers worry they can't do. And Tim has created very simple but fantastic signature sounds. And it was filled with them. It felt almost like, Act 1 was split into two, Act 2 was split into two, and Act 3 was split into two as well. It felt like each individual section had its own signature sound. So I would suggest to you, Tim, take each of those signature sounds and make a new track. This is almost like a 6-track thing, or at least a 3-track thing. The thing I really liked is how it starts off very, very simply. It starts off with a signature sound, ticking. So Vic and I, when we're on Protégé, we're often talking about simplicity, especially with this stuff. You want to start small, because especially if you want to get a big sound, the way to achieve a big sound is to have a comparably quiet sound. So if you start smaller, the bigger climax will seem bigger in comparison. And this is why we put those stop downs in our cues in between, especially Act 2 and 3, because it makes the return of Act 3 seem even louder in comparison to the silence. So I really liked how you started that nice and simply, I wouldn't say quietly, but it was simple. What I would suggest is that Act 1 the tension could be built more gradually. It felt like there was sort of one section and two section. The first section with a long, slow. Was it a long, slow? Was long, slow the second one? The first section had one signature sound. The second one had, I think, a longer signature sound, but the ticking sped up. I would have liked to have it feel like a more gradual increase in tension. And then layer some risers. Don't worry and do not avoid using risers in Act 1, because remember, Act 1s are used in Act 1s of trailers, and especially this type of stuff. This is for me on the horror side of action sound design, especially towards the end with that screaming. So in horror trailers, they will have a big riser into the drop where we're suddenly dropped into this terrifying world, because that transition in a horror trailer is, isn't this nice holiday cottage? This is a lovely holiday cottage. Let's all go, wait, what's in this dark room? And then this is where the tension comes in. And then they open the door and boom, we get the drop into the flying tea cakes and, all sorts of terrible things, knives and forks not being separated correctly in the dishwasher. Then let's go into Act 2. For me, I think it had the same thing. I wanted to hear you ramp up the tension more, Tim. It was again, the sounds were fantastic. The hits were great. You left a lot of space, which I liked. In fact, Espen, could we hear Act 2 again?
Yeah.
Thank you. Again, Act 2 can start small. Okay, stop. Okay, so here, that's what it felt like we jumped into a separate section. It was almost like another track, or at least the third act, or at least another act of another track. I wanted more of that monster cello thing. You're going, that could grow and become a single trailer cue. And this is what we have done so well with the Throat series, is it would often just be one signature sound that just kind of grows throughout. Because you've got to remember, think of it from an editor's point of view. They want to give the trailer a sense of identity. And if your cue has loads of signature sounds in it, it doesn't immediately have that identity. So I would suggest either taking that first sort of yowling cello and making that and growing that Act 2, or cutting out and starting from the bit when the ticking comes in. and then build up the tension. And there's such a simple way, guys. Just layering risers is a huge way to bring tension. It's not cheating. It's not cheating. It's kind of like somebody saying, oh, you can't play a violin with a long bow. That's cheating. You've got to create a sustained sound, and it can't all be low wobbling basses. You need to have sort of these glistening textures rising up from the earth. Then when we hit into Act 3, loved it, felt massive. Not too sure about the vocal. I liked it, but I felt pigeonholed the track a bit too much. They're kind of like screaming man. It could be, that would be an alt version, with scream or whatever. But this, Tim, for me, is the start of an album rather than a single cue. And I think that's a very positive message to go forward with. Amazing signature sounds. Just remember to build that tension. You started it simply. Keep building that tension. Yeah. I like talking about this stuff.
Should we move on?
No, let's carry on talking about it. We'll move on.
We're going to go with Minko with his track, When I'm Gone, Avenge Me.
Has he put an 808 kick on this one?
Yes. Or? No.
Dude, that was intense. I'm going to start at the end, not the very end, but that when we dropped into Act 3, I was like, oh, it's lost intensity. And then you're like, oh, loved it. Now I'm going to do that really annoying thing. Can we have another 10 more seconds of rise? Maybe even 15. It's one of those things where you cannot have enough of that. It's like no one's going to say to you when you're doing an epic hybrid track, whoa, your Act 3 sounds way too big. It's in this stuff, no one's going to say, oh, that riser was well too tense. Because of the way you've done it, and it's a really clever trick to avoid thinking of Act 3 in a certain way. Really clever trick to almost take Act 2 and just extend it. We had that. Act 2 was built brilliantly, by the way. The tension, the rise, I loved all the risers. That's how you build it. It was simple. It was just like dun all the way through, and then these risers, the lovely sort of gated synth that you opened as, oh, this is a really good trick. opening up the filter. And when I say filter, it always sounds snazzy, but you could just use a high pass or low pass EQ. That's all I'm ever talking about. I'm not talking about anything snazzier than just closing down or opening up those single band EQs. Fantastic Act 2. I would possibly, instead of having the kind of lull into Act 3, I would possibly have either a complete drop cut where it's like, and then it comes into it like, again, like someone's slapping you in the face really hard. You think they've gone, but they've actually just got a massive glove. And, because I think that would be more impactful than the lull. Lulls you have to really, really know how to do. They are surprisingly tricky. It's kind of like middle eights. People slap a middle eight on here and there, and only to realize they've just slapped like 8 bars of inferior songwriting onto a great song. If you're going to do a lull, understand that the drop has to come in, but the tension needs to be there the entire time, even in a lull. But yeah, I think a drop cut straight into the thing, another 15 seconds of riser. The only query I have is on that initial string bend. Sometimes when you pitch bend too much, it sounds very keyboardy. And sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's not. It's up to you to decide. I would suggest either reducing the amount of notes that are being played in the patch. It sounded like there was quite a few notes in there. Maybe it was like an octave and a fifth. He's writing. A couple of okay, there we go. That might be why the pitch felt like, when you've got like open up a synth patch that you don't realize it, but the pitch bend is set to 2 octaves. And you start playing with it, and you're like, do, wait, what? It felt a little bit like that. And I would probably address that either by just completely smashing it to death with all kinds of distortion, saturation, compression, to the point where it sounds like a distant monster being abused on another planet, that type of thing, like. And then you can bring it forward a little bit more. Once you've got the drums in and everything else, it sat much better. It was just when it's stark on its own, you have to be really kind of wary of the sound choices. But that was great. I loved the last act. Give me more of that last act. Good job.
Do you want to maybe answer Paul's question from the chat?
Oh, okay. How do you add to the track where it sounds like the same sound is just getting bigger and bigger? Minko, do you want to answer that? I guess you're talking about Minko's track. Rises upon rises. Oh, you mean, yeah, I'll let Minko answer.
I just did the filter thing, and I also did the Decapitator from Sound Toys. Also used the drive of that. I automated a lot, and I also did some volume rights with stuff. So there's a lot of layering going on, also with the signature sound thing, and I just build up on it, and everything is automated. So there's a lot of automation going on, and I have a favorite riser pack that Richard did. 12 string risers is it, but I don't know exactly the name of the company Richard invented for that, but you should get that. It's on the TMS website, I think, right? Is it?
It is indeed. It's just called imaginatively string risers.
Yeah, and I use that a lot for a lot of different things. It's under a lot of tracks, and I heard from Guy Jones, who also for Blue Pearl and Prodigy, he when there's something missing, he recommends that one. so that's it.
Well, thank you, and thanks for the plug as well. That was yes.
Yeah, 10%. No, but the main thing is if you do the automation thing, and I also did the wider thing, the stereo thing. I also automated. So maybe that is the thing that you talk about getting bigger and bigger. It's also getting wider. Does that answer your question?
Certainly answers my question.
Okay, sorry.
He says, okay, cool. Thanks for that. Thanks, Miko.
Okay.
Yeah, great advice. Layering rises or risers, however you want to call it, layering them at different start points is such an easy win. Because they're starting at different points, it feels like you're creating the most enormous orchestra of noise. And if you combine that with automation, so much of this stuff, organic sound design, action to sound design, even electronic sound design, so much of it is just boring, drawing in or playing in automation of volume, of panning, of filters. But that's the stuff that is going to make one single sound grow throughout the whole cue.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, very good. Let's do Richard Graham. His track Casale.
Dude, okay, right. The percussion on that track is fantastic. Is that all castle-related percussion? Yeah. I'm going to say something kind of outrageous. I think the percussion could have almost carried that in and of itself. The sounds were so interesting and unique that you definitely didn't need the strings. Strip the strings out. Because the danger with putting strings like that on a cue like this is you shift the mood into something completely different. If you do use strings, think of them more as a textural thing, or think of them as just playing the root and supporting the boîmes or the pulses. So I would suggest, as an exercise, take the strings out. Especially that time when the strings come in, the percussion sounds brilliant. It's almost like trailerized stomp. And it's actually quite a common thing for trailers to have odd sections of percussion like that. So it might be one of those wild card tracks that lands because the character of the percussion. You raise an interesting area where you do the tempo shifts. Because a couple of people have asked me, what's the deal with tempo? Can you do it? You can use tempo changes. Tempo slows and speed ups within a section. I don't know. I'd like to have an editor here to support my point of view, but my thoughts on is that it reduces its usability as a piece. if you had it as almost a toolkit of tempo slows, as slowdowns, then it could be really usable, especially with those sounds you had. I would like to hear the percussion being used a lot more sparsely in the intro. So you've done something that I often fall prey to, especially in horror stuff. There's this tendency with horror, especially the sound design end, to have ricochets and all sorts of interesting effects from string players. And what we tend to do is we worry that we're leaving too much space, so we chuck in loads of them. Every bar, there's a new kind of string effect. And in this case, every sort of bar, there was a new kind of percussion. Like, leave us with a bang. Your castle, which, for those of you listening, Richard apparently lives in a castle, which I think we can see behind him. King Richard. No. Anyway, the sound of those sounds just lovely. So take the strings out. There's some nice brass in there. Now, I think what we can do is take what Minko has done in his and apply the same to your brass. So if you're going to use boîmes, think of them as starting quiet or starting distant and then getting closer. So when you start them, you can start them all playing up to their top registers, or at least with the horns, their mid to high register. But the problem is you have nowhere to go from there. So you either start low with just the tubas, euphoniums, etc., or you do have the same patch playing exactly the same notes across the track, and you use a single band high cut filter that you open up. So it starts off as if they're in the distance, and you just open it up gradually. It's such a cheap trick, but it works wonders, especially if going from one section to the next, you open the filter considerably. So yeah, take the strings out, progress that boîme in. I would probably suggest to take the tempo thing out and think of progressing the intro in a more sparse but uniform way. Because you think about, imagine those hits being edit points. That type of thing. Don't be afraid of space, especially in Act 1. It's one of my favorite things to do is leave space. It's like negative space in a drawing. Sometimes the negative space can be the most powerful aspect of it. But great track. Love that percussion. Let's hear more of that.
All right, let's move on to Dave Graham, the other Graham. Unleash the Beast.
Uh-oh. Nice. Right, Dave. For me, this was 2 tracks. We started off in the kind of the epic hybrid world, and then we went into a dark swagger world. You know, that kind of like pentatonic rising. So I would think of this as 2 separate cues. So I'm going to deal them with as 2 separate approaches. In the brief, the action sound design we're going for, we tend to avoid harmonic progressions. Sometimes they are used in the back end when it gets massive. But generally in the intros, we are letting the signature sound do the work. And I've really felt that kind of the signature sound you had at the start of this wasn't being given the space it could have had to shine. I loved everything you did in the first half. That's a different brief. Let's take that first sound. The simple way to get about this, Dave, is just to take out the harmonic progression. So you had like a question and answer harmony going, you know, you have this, which I loved. Maybe start the signature sound lower, where it's like, and then it just gets filthier and filthier. And then that progression stays on the root chord. It doesn't do anything else. It doesn't need to do anything else. That took me many years to get over this. I would feel this need to put a progression in there. I'd be in C minor. I'd be like, must put A flat in. You know, it's once you get over that, it's amazing how freeing it is. And I think it would be a really good exercise to just say to yourself, I'm not allowed to use any progressions. So that's the first one. Let's hear that signature sound progress in and of itself. Just as an exercise, you could just do a 1 minute 30 cue that's just question and answer, but growing. Because you've got great sounds in there, Dave. Now, the second section, Espen, can we hear the second section when it cuts into the... this bit? This is on brief. That sound... Right, thanks, Espen. Now, if you're going to do that progression, let it jump up that minor third, but don't let it jump up to the fourth. So you've got this... bring it back down to the root. It's, you know, because jumping up to the fourth immediately says to us guitarists, blues swagger. You know, we're going in for a gunfight in a bar. But before that, so for me, David, that is the goal. That's the money, that section. That's the bit where you see a superhero, you know, suddenly coming into their own in Act 2. You know, they've got character, they've got, I don't want to say balls because they might not, but, you know, they've got aggression, they've got confidence. It's, I really, really love that. And I would love to hear that being pushed and developed. And think of it like this, that you are not allowed to go anything other than that interval of a minor third. You have to explore the growing textures and the growing volumes, you know, and it's a really tricky one to get your head around. But once you do, it's just like, wow, this is pretty cool. I can just stay on C the whole time. You know, eat that, music education. But yeah, great. That's that middle section. Loved that.
All right. We're going to do Mike.
So this probably be the last one.
Yeah. Here we go. Brutal Assault.
Wow. If I had my if I had a subwoofer, I'm sure I'd have ruptured my bowels listening to that. Mike, those sounds were purest filth, and I loved them. So this is actually a great example, in fact, an exceptional example of exploring textures and just letting the sounds move and breathe. You know, it's almost like you have to imagine that you're twiddling on those synths when you're doing this. And I'm pretty sure Mike loves to do that. So, yeah, you took me somewhere special in that last bit there, Mike. It was absolutely disgusting in a good way. Now let's jump to the start. There is a danger with a ticking sound for it to lag a little. So my suggestion, Mike, is for you to introduce that tick in a more in a slower way, rather than it kind of coming in right from the start, tick, 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 because then it felt like it sat back on the beat. It's kind of like, you know how sometimes if you put a four to the floor kick on a track, sometimes it excites the track, sometimes it makes everything just sit back and relax. And but the same is true with a pulse like that, a ticking pulse. If you were to approach it like this, that you didn't have the tick for the first, I don't know, 30 seconds, and the tick only came in that section, imagine the act 2, as it were, and you brought it in with a tick, tick, you know, whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes. It's like you're doing like a clubby snare fill, but really slowed down. And then I would probably just suggest we have a little bit of a riser. I know it's cheap, but I love them, because that would have completely finished it off. So just careful we don't sit back on a ticking sound. But once this track got into its groove, Mike, that was, I think, an excellent track to finish on. Excellent track. And also the thing is that sound, hardly anyone does that. Like, hardly anyone does that, like, industrial sound design. And there are a couple of companies that do, and they do well with it. And it's so unique sounding that it gets used in really interesting trailers. So, yeah, keep pushing the envelope with that, because that's fantastic. And that's the wonderful thing about this brief, is we don't sort of rely so much on melodies and harmonies. We rely with our inventiveness with sound. And it still amazes me how, you know, I've known Mike for a while now, how I can hear a track and I'm like, oh, it's Mike, just because of the way he does those sounds. And, you know, and I have that with a lot of you. I can recognize your cues from the sounds you create. And that's what I love about this. So, guys, these tracks were fantastic. You know, good selection, Espen. Sorry if you didn't get yours played today, but there will be another brief set for next month, August. I believe I set the date. Have I set the date already? I'm looking at Espen. He's looking at me.
You sent it to me. I'm going to post.
Okay. Yes, I have set the date. And do you remember what the next month's brief is? Oh, it's Espen. Where's the preparation?
I'm sorry, guys. I will post it tomorrow.
Okay, Esther will post it on the community. For those of you listening, I hope you enjoyed the creativity and talent of the Trailer Music School. Guys, I'm so impressed. That was outstanding. And I cannot wait to see you all next month. Don't forget, post your questions.
I think it's hybrid orchestral.
Is it? Ooh.
Yeah. So the last month's brief, we had like orchestral, and now it's with the hybrid elements. So yes. Superhero, big stuff.
Yes, it's the combination of the two. Yeah. So actually, Richard's track kind of went there, and so did Dave's. Kind of went there. It's your sound design meeting your orchestral cue in somewhere in the middle, and making sweet sound love. The wonderful thing about this is the same rules apply for both of them. Character is so important. And if you can get an interesting sound on a hybrid cue, that sells the cue. I mean, a couple of you from Protégé and nodding along to that, because it's the hymn sheet I sing from every week. Give us character. Give us character. You can do it, even with a piano. So yeah, I look forward to hearing what you guys have done in the next month. And like I said, any questions, fire them over to Espen in the community so that I can answer those at the beginning of next month's call. You guys are absolute legends. Thank you for being here, and thank you everyone who's listening as well. This will be going out as a podcast. If you don't want your music put out, just let us know and Espen will chop it, but I don't know why you wouldn't. It's great publicity. Yay! Right, guys, thank you so much, and have a good evening, morning, day, night, wherever you are in the world, and I will see you next month.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.